Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the continuation of the Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling Review Series. This is the 27th of November 1982 edition, and Rick Harris versus Mike Rotundo. Rotundo, a pretty consistent person at this particular point, and just interesting that we kind of are coming into new talents coming into the area right around the holiday season. I don't know. To me, that's interesting. But anyway, Rick Harris eventually becomes Black Bart, and that is notable because he's a major force in the Mid Atlantic or the world class territory. Which, if you haven't already checked out, we've got over 300 audios of that. Mike Rotundo here stays pretty well in control the majority of this match. Airplane spins, basic maneuvers, and basic stuff there. And again, we see Rotundo with an airplane spin and getting a victory. We go to Live Arena highlights here. Not exactly a fan of these, but they are what they are, and ultimately leading to a, you know, um, Sergeant Slaughter again holding on to the tag team championships. He and Cornoodle still in major control there, kind of trying to take out Steamboat and friends there, cut off, and again they take out Youngblood with the hanging over the top rope. That footage has been seen before, so won't really go out of the way to describe it. But needless to say, the presence of Sergeant Slaughter and Don Cornoodle, the idea of taking them out is less than happy. Fucci and Paul Jones is the next in the series of matches. Fucci is a Japanese star who goes pretty well with Jones here in terms of Jones being the former Mid-Atlantic multi-time champion, and they continue to kind of have a competitive enough match, but, the Japanese star does get some catch as catch can, American style, I guess you'd say, influence, and doesn't necessarily get everything he wants in terms of the way in which he comes across. Needless to say, Jones is pretty dominant during the maybe, I guess you'd say, second half of the contest. Not exactly going to be writing home about his foray. Fucci is pretty decent on the mat, but obviously has been sent here to get more Americanized in style. The Japanese would do that throughout the 70s and 80s, just giving them tours and also trying to get a worldwide feeling for their wrestlers as well as for the American market. Now, Japan is almost like a holy grail for wrestlers, but doesn't have the same traditions as previous generations, nearly to the same degree. Although, that's not to say that there isn't still good Japanese wrestling. There is, but it's also sprinkled with a lot more high spot junior heavyweight stuff than before, being treated as major on top. A modified, single leg crab and a submission victory for Jones. Jones, of course, still a member of Humperdinck's army, and we see Bob Orton Jr. talking about challenging for various championships and wanting to get at Ric Flair, wanting to be a babyface guy. And I mean, Bob Orton Jr. at the time, not turning on, not particularly good as a speaker, but manages to come into his own in the weeks and months to come. Orton Jr. in a tag team match here with Jack Briscoe is a very bizarre combination here, to me at least. But Orton Jr., Cowboy Bob in a babyface role is just weird because it's very rarely done. In any event, Briscoe kind of cinching up on his man, and the babyfaces can use extra benefit as Greg Valentine, Ric Flair, and others are here. The tag team match at hand is a Briscoe and Orton versus White and Timms. So again, your goal here is to try and get basic stuff there. The combination of knee lifts, other basic maneuvers, not exactly going to write home about what you see, but at the same time, Orton manages to get a power slam. Orton is so smooth. If he had been a more competent talker, I truly think that Bob Orton Jr. might have been one of the more complete guys of the 80s in general, but obviously he never really found talking. Obviously, the father of Randy Orton is a guy that everyone should watch if you are trying to learn to ply your craft to the best of your ability. The team of White and Timms basically hanging on pretty well, and there is a kind of a feeling where things are pretty intense. Piper being considered insane, there is a series of promos where Abdullah the Butcher comes in. Abdullah's been brought back by Piper, then, to deal with Flair, to deal with Valentine. Piper and Jimmy Valiant are out there with Orton and Abdullah. So kind of getting the heels under control. We see Jack Briscoe kind of talking about wanting to get his hands back on Paul Jones. Jack Briscoe also wanting to get his hands on the championship along the way. And we see a newcomer in Sweet Brown Sugar versus Greg Valentine. Basic maneuvers, as it were, there. Valentine takes control early, although Brown Sugar manages to have several matches in the next several weeks that are super competitive. Valentine, obviously, your Mid-Atlantic champion. Valentine, a guy that being treated as top level because of his association with Flair. Sweet Brown Sugar fights back on Valentine quite a bit and brawls with him, not willing to take backward steps by any stretch of the imagination. Big Irish whip there and basic maneuvers along the way. Valentine managing to get advantages wherever he can, including cutting Brown Sugar off as often as he can. Maybe not as consistently as one would desire, but then we see Roddy Piper come out for a promo basically talking about wanting to get back in the ring with Flair, wanting to get back in the ring with Valentine. Flair and Valentine, guys that he wants to deal with, worth a promo worth going out of the way to see, and Flair then comes out with a promo where he puts over just about anyone who is on the heel side of things. He also offers a collegiate-style series to various enhancement talents, and Flair wrestles collegiate style with several talents and makes his way out from underneath. Finally, after several minutes of this, they basically go almost 10 minutes with this. Flair says there isn't enough competition, and Roddy Piper puts Flair in his place. A babyface Piper against Ric Flair. Flair complains about what's happened, and finally they jump Piper from behind and rub his face into the floor, into the steel floor, and kind of they do the old angle where the skin is sandpapered off Piper's face. That's the eventual run. Mr. Number One Paul Jones is also a pretty big deal here, and we see the gloating of heels such as Number One Paul Jones, Sergeant Slaughter, and again they even go back and highlight the pure dominance of Valentine and Flair, and the tag team champion, otherwise known as Sergeant Slaughter, is still here, and the heels are in dominant control as we close this program. We are going to be back with more right after this.